a scion of many worlds. And how has that worked? Morgana Skitterway asks incredulously as Horus carries in her tied-up son. Bribery, Horus says happily, even as he sets down Emmanuel in a seat and opens a large keg of drink near him. The proboscis is in it in moments, and he chuckles. I told him that if he doesn't take at least the next 3 hours off, he's not getting any jungle juice from me for a month. Emmanuel says nothing as the level on the side of the drink lowers and shows he's draining the entire keg fairly consistently. The chains are suddenly falling to the side next to him, and he catches them to lower the bundle to the floor. Hey, Horus protests, but instead of leaving, Emmanuel shifts the Canador scale chair and reclines back on it. All right, fine, but you're on thin ice. Emmanuel gives off a huff of amusement instead as the next stasis chamber is opened. As the young Tret inside is slowly helped up and tries to find his balance, there's a rumbling chime. Horus snickers at the sight of Emmanuel, fast asleep with his proboscis still in the keg. Is that safe for Urthani? Oh yes, it's undignified, but the proboscis makes no contact with the respiratory systems. It's a straight shot to his stomach. Morgana explains. Then how does it suck without... Oh, it's some axiom thing, isn't it? Yes, there are axiom effects in the bones to initiate suction, and there are muscles all the way down the organ to continue the feeding. They're far more developed and strong in Emmanuel, and the enhanced proboscis Urthani, and that's not even touching the... Morgana begins to lecture before coughing into a fist. Pardon, I slipped into lecturing again. Why is he so tired? What has he been doing? One of the observing doctors asks. He literally reached into the afterlife, saw everything he ever wanted, gave it up and kept going before talking someone else who had their greatest dreams fulfilled to come back. Even if it wasn't physically exhausting, that sort of thing can drain you. Leaves you feeling wrung out and empty, Horus says. It's fascinating. An incredibly varied number of soul repositories for afterlife occurs. The questions of how many there are, if they're limited, how they're limited if they are, if there's something after the afterlife, and many, many other questions that need answers. Dr. Skitterway says before she reaches into her coat and pulls out a very large knitted blanket. She tosses over the dark and light gray blanket over her son and gives him a pat on his enormous knee before turning back to continue to observe as her students assist the men out of their stasis pods. The sensation of a burp wakes up Emmanuel as he reflexively closes his proboscis and sits up as he withdraws it. His mind scrambles for a moment and he places himself. He thumps his chest a couple of times as he tries to place things. Another burp comes up and he blinks as he examines the room. It's empty. He nodded off and missed everyone being restored from stasis. Oh, great. Well done, Emmanuel. They needed your help and you were guzzling booze and napping. Good job, dumbass. He chides himself as he rises. His antenna twitch as he stretches a bit and there is a series of cracking sounds. Right, back to it. He bundles up the blanket and tucks it away. It's nice. He does the same to the keg. He shouldn't leave messes around after all. Then he teleports over the Aridus Valley and looks down before swooping towards a large concentration of people. There's energy here, which inevitably means he's needed. He lands to the cheers of the crowds. He offers a smile. Calm down. I've only arrived to see how I can help. Help is needed, I presume? He asks as he looks over the crowd. Mostly Lirak, some Erumenta, about 3 Jorgwa. Well, we were talking about what would be expected from the independent cities. There has been concern with trade and, hey, it's only been a few hours, Horus calls out. Look out below. The crowd looks up as Emmanuel sighs before he snaps out his wings and blows a wind that carries the civilians out of his brother's way. The Titan lands right next to him. You are supposed to be resting. I have rested. I've slept. I've drunk. I'm ready to keep going. Emmanuel states, and Horace sighs before grabbing him by the shirt and pulling him close to examine him further. Did you know that your mother has some amazing tips on Earthani physiology? Horace asks out of nowhere. Considering that I know she was an accredited expert on the subject by the time I was 3 months old, I'd say yes. Good. Then you won't be surprised to know that she taught me how to tell when an Earthani is tired and refusing to acknowledge it, when they need a break, Horace says. And that would be? It's in the eyes, not the antenna. That's physical exhaustion in the antenna. The deeper stuff is in the eyes. They're compound and normally quite fast. The illusion of a normal eye on them is the result of the little eyes shifting to focus more. Gives you amazing vision, but if you're emotionally distracted or mentally exhausted, they lose some of their speed and your eyes blur as they move. And they're blurred now? Emmanuel asks. Not as bad as when you first gave out helping Archeon. They were moving so slowly you could have drawn pictures by shifting your focus, but you're leaving a trail still. When you're really together, your focus shifts so fast your eyes look like they're teleporting in their sockets. But now? Horace asks, and Emmanuel shoves him off with ease before bringing out his communicator and recording himself looking from side to side. He plays back the video, and it's exactly like Horace said. His eyes are shifting so slowly that it looked like he had horizontal bars across his eyes instead of anything resembling the false pupil he normally has. Well, damn. You didn't know? I can't see my own eyes normally, Horace. I don't spend a lot of time in front of mirrors. Not even in the bathroom. I've been keeping my eyes closed in the bathroom. It's sort of a personal joke, Emmanuel says, and Horace sighs. Stay on break until you can look around without leaving trails in your eye. You need to recover. Damn it. But, Emmanuel states, and then Horace grabs him around the mouth. Was whatever you were debating on something that needed direct intervention? Horace asks them all. Well, do you need the exhausted moth to do your job for you, or are you all right? Horace asks and gets a dirty look from Emmanuel. We're fine. We're discussing trade, not something like a giant monster rising up or anything. Right. Well, he needs to rest and doesn't know when to. So I'm going to lock him into his bedroom for another few hours until he's a bit better. But what is the actual... Emmanuel begins to ask before Horace starts literally dragging him away. Seriously, brother, you've got to take care of yourself, Horace states before raising his voice a little. I know you care, but you can't help anyone if you work yourself into a stupor or a grave. I'm fine. If not for Axiom, you would have worked yourself into a pulp by now. Get some damn sleep, Horace states. Do you even know where I sleep? You repurpose an unused lecture hall so you'd have enough headroom to stand after you grew to be way too big for everything else. I know, Horace replies as he gets Emmanuel through the crowd. Let me walk on my own at least. Emmanuel orders him and Horace lets him go and then turns around to face him. Fine. I'll get more sleep. Seriously, man, you're working far too hard. You're going to kill yourself at this rate. Horace chides him as they fully leave the crowd. We're out of earshot. You can drop the act. Who's acting? Horace asks. You really need to take it easy, and you're giving away every marker of an Earthani that's been through too much. I don't need to sleep. I get more than enough. You get enough physically, but you've just brushed up against what's beyond death and actively chose not to go through. That's not something small. So you're going to take a break, a proper break, not a drink and a nap. What are you saying? I've spoken with your mother and we brought in several doctors. You are on forced leave for the next 3 days until you calm the hell down. You piece of... Emmanuel begins before Horace throws an arm around his neck. Have you had a single day off the past few months? What? Has there been a single day you haven't been training, laboring, teaching, fighting, planning, or doing something otherwise worthy of a massive paycheck? Horace demands, and Emmanuel thinks. He thinks hard. The fact that I don't have a ready answer is telling. The closest thing you've had to vacation is when you're passed out or dealing with a girl that's a cross between a teenage daughter and a political prisoner. And again, people get paid to babysit political prisoners. Get some rest. Horus orders him as he forces Emmanuel to march along with him. I still think that you're being a little too... Emmanuel begins before a massive yawn cracks his face. Shut up. I said nothing, Horus says smoothly. In just a few minutes, Horus walks into his room and looks around. The crude mannequin off which his armor hangs. The posts where his swords hang from. The numerous books piled on a desk with a pedestal on stilts for him to read off of. Finally, there is the massive collection of blankets, pillows, and a series of mattresses on the bottom. It's his crude substitute for a bed before the ships arrived. He hangs up his cape, unbuckles his belt, and slides out of his clothing. As an Orthani, there's nothing really showing off as he strips himself naked and then crawls onto the massive pile. He holds up his claws and tilts them so they're at their most reflective. He looks right into it before he focuses his gaze in a circle. He can actually make a circle as he does this, and he drops his arm with a sigh. Of course, he says. Of course, because why not? He holds out his claw and focuses the axiom. His communicator slaps into it and he starts browsing the data network setup around Lakran. He turns it off after getting what he was looking for across 3 different sources. Of course, he had to be completely honest about that. Go figure that I wouldn't be taught about this bit of my own race's biology, he mutters to himself before yawning again. Did it really affect me that much? It's still there. I don't need to rush. Forever lasts. Forever lasts until it doesn't, which wasn't even a month ago. He closes his eyes and rubs over them. Feeling the exhaustion suddenly hit him now that he's no longer moving. Just how tired is he? He doesn't bother opening his eyes again and begins to sleep. Hopefully, everyone else has things. Who knows? It may help in even more ways than him just getting extra sleep and no longer trailing lines over his eyes. He fades back into consciousness some hours later as he feels something pushing at his fur. His eyes don't open, but they don't have to. He can tell easily with his antenna. There is a woman trying to push a knife in past his fur. Not going to happen, but still annoying. The Erumenta struggles more and clearly resists the urge to curse as she gets nowhere at all even while leaning on the knife. You know, he begins and she starts badly. You're only going to blunt the knife and maybe hurt yourself doing that. She bolts, but his reflexes are good and he grabs her by the ankle. The knife comes down and the wrist is covered too. The only parts of his hands that aren't coated in the impenetrable fur are his claws, something she notices as she drives the dagger between 2 sections of the joint. He opens his eyes at that and uses his other claw to pull the knife out of her grip and crushes it. I'm trying to take a break, lady, he says before huffing. He grabs his communicator and uses the emergency code. Get someone over here. Some girl just tried to knife me in my sleep. Understood. Backup inbound, is the answer. The Erumenta takes on a panicked expression and the axiom starts to twist in a teleport. But he has a grip around her and he disrupts it with ease. Not that she doesn't try again another 20 times immediately, but she's not going anywhere.